What's up, guys? If you're new to the channel, my name is Ben and I showcase weird and obscure cars like this one here. This is a 1998 Honda Z, and today we're going to be going all the way through this car in depth, show you what's all inside. So starting off at a base level, what is the Honda Z? The Z was produced from 1998 to 2002 for the Japanese market by Honda. This car was built on the Honda Acty platform, which is the Kei truck. So this thing is actually mid-engined, and we'll get back to that here shortly. So to get us started off here, the Z is what's known as a Kei car. Specifically, this one is a SUV style Kei car. Now, what is a Kei car, you might ask? It's a car that is meant to meet specific requirements like height, length, size, and engine displacement in order to get tax credits from the Japanese government. And this was back in the day. So this thing is limited in all of those areas. So automakers like Honda had to get creative with how they packaged their cars. And this one is super clever. Let's hop inside and take a look at everything. Okay, so now that we're inside, you can see the steering wheel is this nice two-spoke design. And take a look at the cluster here. It's got like a dotted pattern to it, which also matches the steering wheel as well. Moving over to the left here, this one comes with an aftermarket head unit, but you would have had AM, FM radio, as well as a cassette player as optional. This one also features really nice AC, plenty of options. This was kind of Honda's first modern Kei car, so it's packaged very nicely and has a lot of more modern features to it. Over here on the passenger side, you've got this storage pocket. It's actually pretty deep, although it's not super tall, but it does feature this, an additional storage pocket underneath for documents and whatnot. On the doors here, you'll notice that there's speakers down here in the doors, and then you have a tiny storage pocket. Let me see if I can get a better angle. It's not very deep, so it's not gonna hold a phone, for instance. And then you do have up here more storage as the grab handle as well. Interestingly enough, this thing only came with an automatic transmission. You could not option the Z with a manual for any of them. However, this is a 4-speed automatic. If you guys are used to driving Kei trucks with an automatic transmission, most of them are 3 speeds and very limited on their top speed. This one can actually do highway speeds somewhat, so it's a much better alternative than your average Kei car. The last couple features up front, you have an ashtray that comes out here. You do have a socket here, and then down here you've actually got 2 decently sized cup holders. Cup holders are typically lacking on Japanese cars, specifically ones in the 90s, but these right here could hold your average water bottle, for instance. It's also worth noting that there are a lot of blank switches over here. Blank all the way through here. You do get power mirrors here and power windows. The doors are actually very minimal overall. Since your window switches are over here, you don't have anything on here except for your door lock, your handle, and your grab handle. You do get a back seat here, but since it's 2-door, you don't really have immediate access to the back. You kind of have to step through it. But the seating arrangement back here is actually pretty nice. And even with the seats in my driving position, the legroom back here is actually pretty ample. I'll have to say it's quite a bit better than like a Honda Today, which would have been a previous version of a Kei car from Honda. And of course, you can see back in here, it's got some cup holders and cubbies, not only for this side, but also for the passenger side as well. Now, let's make our way to the back here, and this is where a lot of really cool stuff happens. So, right off the bat, a really nice area for storage. There's actually about 3 feet of storage back here without even moving the seats around. But let's go ahead and start putting them down. You start by pulling up on these levers, and this folds them completely flat. Next, you've got these pulls right here. You pull up on them, and then the seats fold up, both of them, like this. And then underneath this rubber matting here is where you'll find the engine cover. Now, let's take a look at it. With the wing nuts removed, we now have access to the engine. This is a 660cc engine by Honda. It makes about 50 or so horsepower in this configuration. And it also came with the option of a turbo. You could get this with an intercooled turbo, same engine, making about 64 horsepower for some extra sportiness. Additionally, these things came in four-wheel drive configuration. This one is actually four-wheel drive. This is a naturally aspirated four-wheel drive model. You can see the diff right there. It's actually fairly capable. So now that I've got everything buttoned back up, you might be wondering to yourself, is it going to be loud back here? And the answer is no. It's actually very quiet. It's actually got a nice protective firewall behind it, and the engine itself runs very smooth and quiet. One last thing to mention back here is that these seats also recline like all the way down like this, so you can actually lay down back here a pretty decent amount. But before we get to the driving aspect, there's one more thing we need to talk about, and that's the frunk. Let's take a look. Just pull this here and it opens up just like this. Let me prop it up. Okay, so now we have it propped up. You can see right here, it's got a spare tire, and then this cover, it looks like an engine, but it's not. It also says UM for Honda Motor Company on here, and this is under midship four-wheel drive, and that's kind of like the project name for this car. But we got some tabs on the side here. Let me pop them open, and this, if you take out all of the spare tire accessories, becomes another storage area. This is typically where the jack and whatnot is installed in here. You can actually see diagrams for it, but this one's actually been utilized into having additional storage here up front. Kind of cool. Another thing that's really cool about Japanese cars is that they have their VIN plates installed right here, or typically on the firewall, or both in some cases. And this car also has a battery that is a standard Japanese terminal size. You can see they're actually really small terminals. If you're from North America, you're used to having a much larger battery with larger terminals on it, and that's something you always have to consider whenever you're purchasing one of these cars. There are swap kits available for them. And then to round off things up here, you have your radiator, your overflow for that. You've got your brakes here, and then you also have your windshield washer fluid reservoir. All in all, that aspect's pretty unique. I don't get to review many cars that have a frunk to them. Let's see how this thing drives. Well, here we are, driving the Honda Z. Now, it's been a while since I've driven a Kei car, but I've driven plenty of them throughout the years. This is already, just starting out on this drive, one of my all-time favorites. Because this is like an SUV, a two-door SUV Kei car, you sit up higher. It reminds me a lot of the Mitsubishi Pajero Mini. I actually drove one of those just a couple of days ago. And this thing gives you such a, not really a commanding driving position, but I'll say this, it's more normal of a driving position than you get in some of the more low slung Kei cars out there, which is a nice change of pace. Also, like I mentioned earlier, you can't really hear the engine, even though it's right back here underneath the seats and the floorboard. It's not singing away super loud. I can hear it, and it might not necessarily translate all too well on video. I'll get on it here in a minute and see what kind of a noise it makes under a little bit more stress. But just driving this thing around town, let's start there. Driving it around town is super comfortable. Of course, it's like most Hondas, not really super sporty suspension, not really meant for more off-roading. This is kind of like the everyday car. Honda makes a lot of just everyday cars. You know what to expect when you hop into a car like this from Honda. And this car definitely fits the bill into what I would consider normal for Honda. Now, I will say this, even though this car is super small, it's not that quick because it does only have about 50 horsepower or so. So that's always something to keep in mind. That isn't just a Honda Z thing, it's a Kei car thing. The most horsepower you're gonna see out of any Kei car, 64 horsepower. That's just by law, regulation. It's going to be 64 horsepower or less. And this is no different here. So 50 horsepower in this one, four-wheel drive, naturally aspirated. Again, you could get the turbo, and the turbo, I have not driven one of the turbos yet, but that is on my list to do, and I will review one of the turbos whenever I get my hands on one so we can feel the difference. And again, of course, it's just an automatic. You cannot get these with a manual transmission, which I think that's fine for something like this. Again, it's more of an SUV than it is anything else, so It's really unique. So now I'm here in a parking lot and you can hear I'm in reverse. The turning radius on this thing is actually pretty good. Of course, given that it has a very, very tiny wheelbase, I think it's sub like 100 inches or so, this thing really can turn on a dime. All right, so I'm gonna get on it here and just get up to the speed limit, and the speed limit is 35 miles an hour. I am pinned at this point. And there it is. There's 35 miles an hour. Okay, so 0 to 60 miles an hour, if you were to measure it in this car, would be something like 18 seconds for the naturally aspirated version and about 12 seconds for the turbocharged version. So that is a very large difference in the two. But then again, I recently reviewed a Honda today that has a 3-speed automatic, and it couldn't even get up to 60 miles an hour when we tested it, and I was floored for about a minute straight. So kudos to this car for having a usable gearbox around town, and also the ability to hit 60 miles an hour in the first place. And this car really does excel at just sitting at stoplights, waiting around. The air conditioner in this thing works supremely well. It's got the tiniest little vents. I don't think I really touched on that super well. It has tiny air vents, but the air coming out of them is super cold in this one at least, and the fan pushes it pretty well too. Now here is the one thing this car does not excel at, and it is hills. You can see I've got a car coming up beside me. I'm pretty much pinned going up this hill, and it's maybe like a 5-degree incline, if that. Having 50 horsepower definitely has some massive drawbacks when you're trying to just get places, but it still climbs and it still does things just fine. Matter of fact, we took this thing off-road at about like a 15-degree incline and some grass, and it handled it just fine. No slips, no stuttering, no nothing. And because it's a viscous coupled all-wheel drive system in this thing, it actually engages everything super smoothly. There's not a bunch of shudder like you get with some of the normal clutch pack style differentials like you get in a Honda CR-V, for instance. So this is actually really nice just over any terrain, really. It kind of makes me wonder what this thing would be like with like maybe like a 2-inch lift on it or something like that, or maybe some bigger tires, some off-road style tires. I bet this thing would be fairly capable off the road given those modifications. Going back to the comfort of the suspension, I'm going over these railroad tracks right here. Man, this car just eats up everything. This is a very nice car to just have and drive around. For a city car, this is absolutely excellent. Like I said, you've got space everywhere in here. The back passengers have plenty of leg room to themselves. There's so much storage in the back for it being a Kei car, like tiny little car, lots of storage, like 3 feet long, 3 feet wide of storage pretty much. I mean, it is really a good place if you want to put groceries or just run around town and pick stuff up. I mean, with the seats lifted up, you could put pretty much anything short of a motorcycle in the back here. I'm sure you could fold up a couple of bikes in the back, throw some longboards, some skateboards, your outdoor stuff will fit through here. I don't think a set of skis will fit through here. Then again, I don't think any Kei car would be able to accommodate for a set of skis anyway. But as far as like just an all-around experienced daily driver car, this thing is awesome. I absolutely love this thing. It's actually a Kei car that I would consider owning myself. I'm not the biggest Kei car enthusiast in the world, mind you, but I do enjoy them, and there is definitely a magic to owning a Kei car. They are just so special, and this one in particular just has so many unique features to it, like the frunk, for instance, that it just has a certain aura about it. And I think that's what somebody is going to look for in one of these, is having a Kei car that's unique, that has its own features, and is different than everybody else's car. This car right here, the Honda Z, fits that demographic. Well, folks, there you have it. There is my thorough review and overview of the Honda Z. I absolutely love this car. This is a Kei car that you could definitely live with on a day-to-day basis. It's absolutely wonderful. It's got the gearing to get it out on the highway. It's just a great car overall. Plus, if we take a look here, this one is available here through my friends at Moses and Womack, and it is $7,500. That's right, sub $10,000 for a car like this that has all of these unique features and abilities and capabilities. I highly recommend it, and if you're interested, give them a call. Well, folks, that's going to be the end of the video here today. If you've watched to the end, thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the content, please consider subscribing. I'll be uploading more videos of cars just like this one. I've got all these other ones to take a look at here at my disposal. So take care. We'll see you in the next one. Later.